Thank you for watching my Skillshare guide. I currently run my own personal finance business at josephseeley.com and love helping people with their financial situation. I used to be bad with finances, and I learned the hard way, but I got myself out of that situation, so I like to share with you as well. I will tackle on how to start saving money, increasing income, decreasing fixed expenses, paying debt, investing, and how to make important financial decisions such as buying a home. I will cover tactics to help save you the most money on your journey to financial freedom. I will also cover common pitfalls that people make during financial decisions and how to avoid them. Now let's begin. First, you need to automate your finances. In the modern era, it makes little sense to invest, pay your bills, and debts manually. Almost all these services permit automatic payments. It also prevents you from having to make decisions whether to save or not. Automate savings right after receiving your paycheck. If you wait until the end of the month, you will likely have used all of your income. It's a normal human tendency to use 100% of our resources when we know we can get more. Automate everything today. It will take less than 5 minutes and is likely the biggest change you can make toward saving and building your net worth. If you ever worry about not having enough money for a big expense coming up, you can always disable those automatic payments and re-enable them when you can afford to save again. By default, everything should be automated though. If you suck at saving, do not rely on yourself. Rely on computers. They are much more consistent. The next thing we're going to cover is budgeting. Budgeting is something that every personal finance person has to talk about for one reason. Income must be greater than expenses in order to succeed in personal finance. If you cannot get past this step, the rest of the information I provide is inapplicable. You do not have to make it too complicated. Spend less than you make. If you spend too much, spend less. If you make too little, try to increase your income. I will give some tips in the next 2 videos of easy ways to do this. There are a few popular methods to budget. There are apps like YNAB and Mint that help you categorize your budget and record your spending automatically through your bank accounts. You just have to look at your phone and keep track of how much money you have left. There are methods where you physically put cash into categorized envelopes that are budgeted for the entire month. You can only use what is in the envelope for that category. Once your envelope is empty, you cannot spend any more money in that category. This stops you from overspending in any category and helps you physically feel how much money you have spent. I personally automate all the money for bills, savings, and investing and look at the amount left in my checking account each month. Since my bank account does not have overdraft fees, I just look at the number left in my bank account and see how much I can spend for the rest of the month. All of these methods and plenty others are fine. Just make sure your income is greater than your expenses and you're already on your way toward wealth. Excessive expenses. It is always important to decrease your costs to make your budget more reasonable. But I always look for things that do not reduce my standard of living. Being cheap and miserable will not make you want to follow your budget. These costs below are significant and simple ways to cut out things in your life. Eating rice and beans every day is a miserable way to budget. Here are 4 ways to eliminate excessive expenses. The first unnecessary expense is interest. If you are paying interest, do your best to reduce that debt so interest payments do not clog your budget. You are paying money to a bank and getting no return. Once you eliminate these interest payments, you can start making interest work for you rather than against you. The second unnecessary expense is high living payments. Whether you live in a home or are just renting, people spend a high percent of their monthly income on where they live. If you spend more than 30% of your monthly income on rent, it may be advisable to look to moving to another property or getting roommates. This can save you $200 to $300 a month depending on where you're living. The third unnecessary expense is bank fees. With so many online banks around, it is unjustifiable to pay $12 a month in bank fees for a checking account. It is also unacceptable to pay $34 when you overdraft. There are banks like Ally that do not have this monthly bank fee. Just the monthly bank fee alone is costing you $144 a year. You get nothing from it. Stop paying bank fees. The fourth unnecessary expense is private mortgage insurance. If you're about to buy a home but have not saved 20% of the down payment, do not buy that house. You will have to pay $80 plus each month to ensure that you will pay for your house. This does not go toward your mortgage payment. You are paying because you're too impatient to wait to save for the 20% of the house's equity. If you feel like you're unable to save for 20% of the house's value, you may want to reconsider whether it's actually good for you to buy a home at this point. Each of these unnecessary expenses bring down your quality of life because of a decision you made. You can rectify these decisions and save yourself a ton of money. If none of these options can be reduced and you're still struggling to make ends meet, then you may need to increase your income. The next step is to increase your income. Similar to how I do not want to make yourself miserable by eating rice and beans, I do not recommend that you work yourself to the bone just so you can save an extra $100 each month. Here are a few ways to increase income without too much extra work. Number 1, rent stuff that you own. If you have an extra room in your house, rent it through Airbnb a few times a month, or rent it out to a short-term tenant. This can bring you hundreds of dollars over the year without too much extra work. You can also rent out physical objects if there is a demand for them. Number 2, sell extra stuff that you own. You probably have extra junk in your house. Sell it on eBay. While you can only do this once, you can easily get an extra $500 that you can put toward expenses. Number 3, do a side job. With apps like Rover, Fiverr, and TaskRabbit, it's easier than ever to find a side job that you enjoy and will earn you an extra $100 per month. Many people need dog sitters, so I dog sit throughout the week to make a fair bit of extra cash on the side. Number 4, ask for a raise. This one takes the most work. Negotiate with your boss a raise. Enumerate how you have brought the company value and how giving you a new raise will permit you to bring the company more value. If they deny you a raise, try to take more responsibility in the company and bring the company more value. After doing this for a while, you can negotiate for a raise later. If you actually increase your responsibility in the company or bring you more value, your boss will recognize this and notice the value you brought. If he wants to be cheap and will not budge, you can start looking for another job. Since you've taken more responsibility, more companies will be interested in you and compensate you accordingly. These methods can bring you over $1,000 per year, which can put a significant dent into credit card debt or student loans. The next thing you want to do is start building credit. Building credit is a way to prove to people that you will pay them back. Good credit can save you thousands of dollars when you get a mortgage or when you get a car loan. It can also allow you to get credit cards with better rewards. It is definitely worth building good credit as the journey to doing so will require you to fix your financial situation. If you always make on-time payments and the amount you owe is zero, your credit score should be immaculate. These two factors make up 65% of your credit score. Most items, except bankruptcy, stay in your credit score for 7 years, which means 7 years from now, your credit score will be based on completely different information. The other 35% of your credit score is made up of length of credit history, new credit, and types of credit used. These factors are far less important than the other two. Length of credit history just means that if you have credit for a longer time, you're more reliable. This means that you should not close any new credit cards because it will decrease the average age of your account. New credit means that if you recently got a loan, your credit will decrease as you're seen as risky if you keep trying to get more loans. Types of credit means that if someone pays back credit cards, loans, and a mortgage, it's seen as more consistent as someone who only pays back credit cards. All of these factors should not really affect on how you take out loans. How do you build credit? You need to take out debt to build credit. Discover and Capital One are very generous in giving out credit cards to pretty much anyone that applies. If you cannot qualify for these cards, you can always open a secured credit card. This would mean that you give the bank the amount of money you would like to borrow from them as collateral. If you default on your loan, then they take that money back. This is low risk for the bank, so they usually will allow pretty much anyone to open a starter card in this manner. As your credit history increases, your credit score will increase as well. The next step in your journey to financial freedom is to create an emergency fund. Everyone hates the emergency fund. It takes a long time to save up for. I recommend an emergency fund of 3 to 6 months of expenses. 3 months if you never get sick and your job is very stable. 6 months if you're in a profession or situation where you can easily be let go, or if you have a sickness. I recommend only a 1-month emergency fund if you have credit card debt. After you pay off your credit card debt, you can save for 3 months after. This will stop you from paying unnecessary interest. So why do you need an emergency fund? We budget for expenses that happen once a year, like renewing a license or taking a vacation. Think of an emergency fund as budgeting for something that may happen 0 to 3 times in your lifetime. It significantly reduces your economic stress and self-insures you from any bad events. What is an emergency? Something that causes inability to make income, non-regular healthcare costs, and obvious emergencies. If your car explodes and you need to drive 2 hours to work, that is an emergency. If your iPhone breaks, that is not an emergency. Where do I put my emergency fund? Some people may recommend putting it in your checking account, but I definitely do not advise doing this. You want your emergency fund to be accruing interest over time. Inflation will decrease the value of your emergency fund over time, since the interest rate of a checking account offers usually 0. The next option is a high-interest savings account. A high-interest savings account is a great option. It is liquid and will be protected in bad economic times when you may need it most. Most financial advisors will advise this option, as there's certainly a good reason to do so. With high-interest savings account earning 2.25% interest, inflation really doesn't decrease its value too much. This high-interest savings account reduces the effect of inflation. If the economy crashes, this money is protected more than a risky investment. The riskier option is a portfolio of 40% stocks and 60% bonds. There are some downsides to this strategy. If the economy crashes, this fund will lose its value. I recommend being on the higher end of the 6-month spectrum if you choose this option, as your emergency fund can decrease up to 50%. The second downside in investing in your emergency fund is that it's not very liquid. You'd have to sell the stocks and bonds and wait for it to transfer in your checking account. For real emergencies, you might not have this time. Since you will only take out this account a few times out of your life, it will grow over time and hopefully grow to outpace your expenses. I do not recommend using your 401k or traditional IRA as your emergency fund, as you may face penalties or miss out on tax benefits. Credit cards have a bad reputation in the personal finance community, but they really are not that bad. It's how most people use them that is bad. They help you build credit, give you a line of credit for 30 days, and give you free rewards. Some people may be upset that I'm describing something that has caused so much pain in their life as something that is good. Using a credit card as your personal bank account is bad. You should only take out a loan that you're 100% sure that you can repay. Think of a credit card as a free month loan that gives you bonus points when you use it. If you do not pay that debt back in 30 days, you owe a massive penalty of 20% interest. 38% of Americans are in credit card debt. So there is clearly difficult in paying back credit cards each month. It is very difficult to get out of credit card debt when you have to pay 20% extra each month for no value. This is why paying off credit cards should be your number one debt priority. Someone who has $3,000 in credit card debt will pay $600 a year to the banks. The worst part of being in credit card debt is that every Snickers you buy is costing you 20% interest. Buckle down and pay it off as soon as possible. Always pay more than the minimum payments. Minimum payments are calculated to take years to pay off your credit cards and maximize the profits at the bank. You may be asking, how do I pay off this debt? Always pay the highest interest rate card first, then the second highest, etc., until you've paid all your credit cards off. This is called the avalanche method in the personal finance community, and this will save you the most money over time. Other finance gurus recommend a method of paying the credit card with the smallest balance to give yourself psychological motivation to continue with the second card. I personally cannot recommend this method as it will cost you more money in the long run. The whole point of getting out of debt is to save as much money as possible and becoming financially free. You can also refinance your credit cards with a personal loan or balance transfer to a 0% interest credit card. These methods are ideal in principle, but if the cardholder's spending habits are not under control, this could lead to even more debt. If you can refinance to a lower interest rate and stop your spending, I highly recommend this method. The last method that is possible is declaring bankruptcy, which should only be used in dire circumstances. If you declare Chapter 7 bankruptcy, all your debt will be discharged. If you declare Chapter 13, you'll be on a 3 to 5 year repayment plan. You should only consider these under the worst possible circumstances where you think it's impossible to pay back your debt. You must contact an attorney before doing so, and do not take bankruptcy lightly. The next step is to pay off debt. What kind of debt should you pay off first? As always, pay the debt with the highest interest rate. Usually the order goes credit cards, then personal loans, then student loans, and then secured loans such as car or mortgage payments. Debt prevents you from building your net worth and acquiring financial freedom. You will be stuck working as long as you're in debt. However, once you're able to get out of debt, you will not be wasting money each month on interest payments and principal payments. This will give you the freedom to start your own business or travel on savings. When you are in debt, there is a persistent reminder that you cannot stop working or you'll go into default. By eliminating your debt as quickly as possible, you love the feeling of paying it off and can start building your net worth. If you're deciding to pay off a debt or invest, I highly recommend paying your debt for that guaranteed return. If the debt is under 4%, I would actually recommend investing in the market though, because the average market return is 7%. Student loans are unsecured debt since the government and private lenders cannot take your degree away from you. Unfortunately, this debt is not dischargeable, which means that it stays with you even after bankruptcy. In your student loans, you may be wondering what the difference between a subsidized and unsubsidized student loan is. Subsidized student loans do not gain interest while you're still attending college, while unsubsidized student loans gain interest from the time the government disperses it. You should focus on paying the highest interest rate loan first, regardless of what type of debt you have. This will save you the most money over time. On a more positive note, the government offers income-based repayment plans, which allow student loans to be forgiven after 20 years of payments for all loans after October 1st, 2007. These payments max out at 10% of your income if you follow the pay plan. If your student loans are held by a private lender, these options are not available. For those who are working for a government or 501c3, you may qualify for the public student loan forgiveness after 10 years of working for the government or a public interest firm. If you think you may qualify, you should file a certificate of eligibility every year to show that you are eligible. Similar to the 20-year plan, these payments are capped at 10% of your income. If you're a high-income earner, 10% of your income may not seem reasonable to you, especially for 20 years. In this case, it may be better to refinance your loans. Grad Plus loans are currently at a 7.6% interest rate, which is an outrageous fee, but makes sense considering anyone can qualify for these loans. If you're creditworthy and have high income, you should look to refinance to get rates between 4 and 5%. Interest rates change over time, so the rates right now may be different than when you're watching this video. As long as your interest rate is lower than the current interest rate, it is worth refinancing. Once you refinance, you give up all eligibility for your loans to be forgiven through income-based repayment plans. When you get a private loan, the private lender pays off your loan to the government, and then you start owing that private refinancer. Next, buying a house. When you go out to buy a house, it is likely that you cannot afford to pay in cash. This leads most people into getting a mortgage. What is a mortgage? A mortgage is a loan from the bank that is secured by collateral. In this case, a house. This means that the bank can repossess your house if you default on your loan. This lowers the risk for the bank and ensures that you have a lower interest rate since the bank can repossess your house once you default. To get a mortgage, a bank will analyze your income, job stability, credit score, and the size of the mortgage. In this analysis, they will determine the mortgage interest rate of the loan and whether they will give you a loan. There are 4 things you need to think about when buying a house: the house price, the interest rate, the down payment, and the mortgage length. What is the maximum price you should pay for your mortgage? A common rule of thumb for financial advisors is that housing costs should take up no more than 28% of your monthly budget. Based on the 28% of monthly income rule, the maximum mortgage you should take out is 3.3 times your annual income for a 30-year mortgage. And for a 15-year mortgage, you should take out a maximum mortgage of 2.2 times your maximum income. Remember, this is your mortgage value and not the value of the house. If you have a household income of $70,000, the maximum 30-year mortgage would be $231,000. So the house value with a 20% down payment would be $288,750. The next topic we'll cover is interest rates. It is essential that you get your interest rate as low as possible. The best way to do this is by having a high credit score, a stable work history with high income, and to buy your house when interest rates are low. Another way to decrease your interest rate is by decreasing the term of the loan. I will talk more about that later though. A 0.5% decrease in interest rates on a $300,000 mortgage will save you $40,000 in interest over the course of the loan. You also need to take into consideration whether to get a fixed rate interest rate or a variable rate. A fixed interest rate does not change over time, while variable interest rates increase or decrease based on the market. If interest rates are high, it is advisable to get variable interest rates, as your interest rate will drop over time. If interest rates are low, it's best to get a fixed interest rate, as it will stay the same over time. To reduce the risk of the bank, it is prudent to put down a 20% down payment. I highly recommend not buying a house if you cannot do at least this. If you do not have the 20% down payment minimum, you have to get private mortgage insurance, also known as PMI. This adds a few $100s over the course of the year to your payments, but it does not increase your equity at all. No matter how you try to justify buying a home now, you can wait to save up 20%. If you currently have PMI in your house, I recommend paying extra to your mortgage each month until you no longer require to have PMI. If you cannot get to 20%, you can qualify for a piggyback mortgage, which gets you out of PMI by taking another 10% loan. In this scenario, you would have a 10% mortgage, an 80% mortgage, and a 10% down payment. But to get this piggyback loan, you would have to have a high credit score. This option is much superior to paying PMI. The next thing you have to decide is the length of your loan term. Most people have a 15-year mortgage or a 30-year mortgage. If I were to advise a random person on the street, I would tell them to get a 15-year mortgage. 15-year mortgage have higher monthly payments, lower interest rates, and half the length of a 30-year mortgage. If you're financially savvy and invest your money, the 30-year mortgage is usually the best option. If you invest the money from cheaper monthly payments and deduct mortgage interest from your taxes, you will come out ahead of those with 15-year mortgages despite the higher interest rate. Inflation also helps reduce the cost of a 30-year mortgage over time. For someone who is more likely to spend the money they save from lower interest payments, the 15-year is clearly superior, as likely you'll have to pay significantly less interest over time. I've included a calculator on my website, josephseeley.com, to compare 15 and 30-year mortgages combined with different investment returns. Next, we're going to talk about financing a car. If you need a car to get to work or to get around where you live, then it may be necessary to finance a car. Whatever you do, do not lease a car. A lease of $250 per month for 6 years, you would pay $18,000 and have no car at the end. It is much wiser to buy a used car by putting down a down payment and paying interest on the rest. Or, even better, just to pay cash for the car. But for everyone, that's not always an option. Unlike a house that appreciates in value, cars depreciate in value over time. I recommend buying a used car outright in cash if possible. I recommend this because most people overpay when they finance things. They cannot afford it, but will have to deal with the consequences later. Similar to buying a house, the standard down payment is 20% for getting a loan on your car. Like a mortgage for your house, car loans are usually secured by the car, which means they can repossess your car if you default. This ensures that the interest rates are low for you. If you do not make the 20% down payment, the dealership will likely require you to pay a higher interest rate. You can trade in your previous car and receive that car's value as a down payment. For buying a car, you should not spend more than 30% of your annual income on the total price. If you make $30,000, you can afford a reliable car for $9,000. For someone who makes $50,000 per year, you can afford a car that is worth $15,000. If these prices sound low, it is because car salesmen and advertisers are trying to sell you overpriced new cars when there are perfectly good used cars on the market. Remember, when buying a car, look at the price of the car. Just because you can finance a new BMW for a 5-year loan doesn't mean you should. You will be locked in that car until you sell it. I recommend getting a used car no matter what car you buy. Think of how much it sucks to drive off the lot and your car losing thousands of dollars in value. Now imagine you buy that car $1,000 cheaper, but still a brand new car. Some people just like new, and if you can afford that, that's great. However, cars lose 60% of their value in 5 years. Buy a 5-year-old car and get a 60% discount. Also, be wary if someone offers you a 0% interest rate loan. If something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. They're taking a risk by giving you a loan, so they have to increase the price of the car to give you a 0% loan, or else it's not worth their value. So if they offer you that 0% loan, try to negotiate the price down more. Good luck buying your car. I hope these tips helped you. Next, we're going to talk about investing, in particular stocks and bonds. Investing is a scary concept since it puts your money on the line, but it's the best way to let your money earn more money. An average return over long periods of time is 7% interest in the U.S. market. This is not guaranteed, though. You may not understand what a stock or bond is or what you do with them. A stock or share is a percentage of a company that you own. If you own one share of a company that has 100 shares, you own 1% of that company. When a company becomes more valuable, your stock becomes more valuable and the price increases. Occasionally, companies will pay their stockholders dividends, a sum paid from the company's quarterly profits. When should you buy a stock? When a company is undervalued and the price is low. Most people are bad judges of when to buy stocks because they are competing against professionals in the finance industry. 95% of financial advisors do not beat the market. It is likely you will not beat the market as well. Do not put all your money in one stock as that stock fails. You will lose a lot of your money this way. You need to diversify your portfolio with different stocks and bonds. If you are not the 5% that beats the market, I recommend investing in an index fund ETF, which represents the entire U.S. economy. Index funds reduce the risk for the investor and is a passive form of investing. Passive investing repeatedly has beaten the hedge funds over time, so you should not feel like this is a bad option. After you put your money in it, do not touch it until you want to withdraw. Withdraw when prices are high and hold your stocks when prices are low. Human psychology tells us to sell when we are losing value, but that is usually a bad idea when holding index fund stocks. The price will rise again. The best strategy is to just leave your money in the market rather than to time the market. Time in the market is a much more effective strategy for the average person than trying to time the market. A bond is a loan from you to someone else. You are letting a company or the government borrow your money at a designated interest rate that they promise to pay you back. The more risky the person you lend to, the higher the interest rate you can receive. Treasury bonds have the lowest interest rates, and risky corporations may have high interest rates. These usually are more stable than stocks and do not fluctuate in value as much. It is important to have investments in both stocks and bonds to not have all your eggs in one basket. Warren Buffett recommends 90% stocks and 10% bonds. As you get closer to a big purchase or retirement, the percent of bonds should increase to increase stability. You do not want to lose equity right before you buy a house or retire, so that is why it is important to stabilize your portfolio. Next, we're going to talk about retirement. I define retirement as the age where you no longer have to work. Personally, I want to work until the day I die, because I enjoy it and would find it boring to go live in Florida and watch CNN all day. How do you get to an early retirement? You need to save and invest. The older you are, the more you have to save. Your goal for retirement is to be able to live on 4% of your total savings. So multiply the amount of income you can live on by 25. If you can live on $40,000, you should save $1 million for retirement. Remember to take into account inflation. $40,000 today is $107,000 in 2059. That means you'd have to save over $2.5 million to retire. If you live in America, Social Security should also supplement this income. No one is certain if Social Security will be here around that time, so would not bank on it being there. Just consider it as a bonus when you retire. Next, we're going to talk about retirement accounts. The best way to save for retirement is through retirement accounts. 401ks, traditional IRAs, and Roth IRAs are all investment vehicles that offer benefits to encourage retirement savings. The main difference between these accounts and taxable accounts is that they have restrictions on withdrawal from them until the age of 59 and a half. A 401k is an employer-sponsored retirement account. In 2019, the maximum contribution that you can make is $19,000. This money is withdrawn from your paycheck pre-tax. 401k contributions are tax deductible, which means that any money you contribute to your 401k will reduce your taxable income. You will choose what your 401k is invested in. Most people put their 401k into targeted funds for the age of their retirement. If you do not know how your 401k is invested, check now to ensure that you're earning significant interest and not invested in a low-interest portfolio. If you make $100,000 and contribute $19,000 to your 401k, then your taxable income will only be $81,000. This lowers the amount of taxes you have to pay from $15,410 to $11,340, a $4,000 tax benefit. However, when you withdraw from your 401k at retirement, it will be taxable income. It is likely that you will get a lower tax bracket considering you are retired. The higher the tax bracket you are in now, the more valuable your 401k is, since you will pay in a significantly lower tax bracket when you're retired. Sometimes employers will match a percentage of your contributions. If employer matches and you have food to eat, always max out the amount in which your employer will match. This is usually a 50% return on investment for 50% matching. If you withdraw from your 401k before the age of 59 and a half, you will pay a 10% penalty and income tax based on your current tax bracket. Do not do this. IRAs are individual retirement accounts that are not provided through your employer. You can open this at a brokerage such as Vanguard or Betterment. Every resident in the United States with an income is permitted to contribute to an IRA. For most people, there are two types of IRAs in which they are all investment vehicles that most financial advisors do not talk about an opportunity fund, but it's something that can bring you great gain when a deal comes by. If you cannot find anything that is underpriced or a great deal, it might be good to put that money into a high interest savings account in something called an opportunity fund. You can invest the money if housing prices crash or the stock market crashes. Whenever you want to buy something because it is underpriced, it can be difficult to sell your stocks and take advantage of a situation. So if you keep your money liquid in a high interest savings account, you can be prepared to act quickly on a good opportunity when it comes to pass. Warren Buffett's firm has huge cash reserves when I'm recording this video. This may be because the market is currently overpriced and is not a good time to invest. I'm not an expert in stock market prediction, so I cannot tell you what will happen. It may be worth having an opportunity fund to take advantage of a recession. Warren Buffett's firm has huge cash reserves when I'm recording this video. This may be because the market is currently overpriced and is not a good time to invest. I'm not an expert in stock market prediction, so I cannot tell you what will happen. It may be worth having an opportunity fund to take advantage of a recession. Thank you for watching my Skillshare series. I hope you learn a lot and apply the personal finance advice to your life. If you have any questions about finances or financial decision making, feel free to contact me at josephseeley@josephseeley.com. I have put on the screen a list of how you should prioritize your personal finance decisions so you know what to do when they come up. Thank you so much.